Hello and welcome back to Onward Shift Podcast. I am super excited to have Lindsay with us today. She works for Matesinmind, who are an incredible charity supporting the construction industry. Lindsay, how are you? And how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, how are you?
I can't complain. But I'd love to know a
Good.
bit more about you and the amazing work Matesinmind are doing for the construction industry, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mates in Mind was a charity founded in 2017. So, we actually haven't been going too long, but we started as part of the British Safety Council. We were kind of built in response to the industry, who kind of flagged in the Farmers Report that we are on average losing 2 construction workers a day to suicide, which is just a crazy figure. I think it's always really interesting when you put it in the kind of perspective of like the physical health and safety industry. Like if we were losing 2 hands a day to circle saws, like the response that the industry would give, yet when it's kind of mental health and that kind of thing, we're still seeing a lot of resistance in terms of having that conversation and doing something about it. So Mates in Mind kind of evolved from there, but we kind of got set up as a preventative charity. So there's so many amazing charities now that really focus on the responsive side. So there's a lot of crisis lines, there's a lot of charities that help get people immediate support, which is fantastic. But we also found that there wasn't so much in that preventative way of, how can we create real long lasting permanent change to the industry so that people are talking when they've had one bad day and not leaving it until they've had a year of bad days and they're already in a point where they can't cope. So that's kind of where we kind of sit, I guess, in the construction industry. Is we work with organizations to kind of better improve their organization's culture and really address the stigma that still exists around talking about mental health in the workplace and getting people confident to say, that call really stressed me out. Like I'm going to take 10 minutes, and that being an acceptable thing to do. So I think that's kind of a summary of what we do. And then I'm a support manager. That's my role. So I work on like a really personal basis with organizations. We really try to understand their organization, how it runs, how it works for them. And because again, without that tailored need, we can throw generic resources out there, but they might not be as successful. With mental health, it's such a interesting but also really important conversation to have, and you really do have to sit down with organizations and learn what's going on for them.
I, I absolutely love that. And I think I just want to touch on the suicide rate. You said,
Mm-hmm.
2 people. I just want to emphasize that it's actually nearly 2 people a day, isn't it, in the UK?
2 people
And I
every
think,
single day. Yeah.
yeah, and that's just like, that's crazy because that's not just 2 people, that's 2 families. There's just no way near enough emphasis on how sad that is. And I don't know how else to explain it. And I recently done a podcast with a gentleman called Stephen Kirby. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
actually the last podcast I did. And the way he spoke about it was just heartbreaking. Like even re-listening to it was difficult. His mental
Mm-hmm.
health journey. He had an accident at work, and that led to him having these like severe mental health issues, which actually led him to nearly committing suicide. And when you think like there's 2 people a day who are committing suicide, how many people are the survivors of that? How many people um, have felt that way, but actually, somehow miraculously gone, no, I'm not going to do this. We're not even considering that number yet, are we? That's so scary and sad.
Absolutely. It's a really, really good point. I think it's that thing of it's amazing that Stephen shares his story and tells people and gives that reality of what is going on for people, and the fact that there are so many other people that unfortunately have been in the same place as Stephen where they felt that was their only way out, and giving that voice back to people to really address the issues that are specific to the industry that have been going on for years and never been addressed despite the stress that it causes all the employees that are having to go through it. And it's also that ripple effect as well. One person in an organization takes their life, and it's their colleagues, it's their friends, it's their families, it's people that have known them for 20 years and not known that they were struggling. It's the feelings that they then have afterwards as well. I think that's really important to acknowledge, because the anxiety that people then have, the grief that people have to go through, it's a mass problem kind of across the nation. And it's something that, again, having these conversations, people sharing their stories, all of that advocacy we can do for it, is just essential, I think, to really make a difference.
You've touched on such an important point there. I've recently, so if I've got a bit of spare time, I just go to building sites and I start
Mhm.
chatting to the guys there. And I think it was maybe a month ago now, I spoke to 2 individuals who both knew a supervisor who committed suicide. These two individuals, two different building sites, two different parts of Essex, and they both knew someone. And I asked him, like, what was done within the company to kind of support them, because that's their friend, that's the guy they spend 40, 50 hours a week with. And they turned around and said, like, the company done a toolbox talk about mental health, and they put up a couple of posters on the canteen. And I was like, what was the toolbox talk like? Like, was it a good toolbox talk? Was it something that you felt educated from? Did you feel like there was support like there for you now? And they said, it's just a bit of paper thrown on the table, told us to read it, sign it, and crack on with work. And you think to yourself, holy shit, like it's draining listening to that consistently. And I think what Matesinmind doing, I think that's really, really, really powerful, because I feel, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong in any time, by the way, but what I understand is you guys jump in before it gets to that stage. So, like, for me personally, I think that's so important. It's so important to get there before it's a problem. But how do we get these big corporations, these masculine men, to come out and go, yeah, I want to talk about my mental health, where many of them don't even believe it exists? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a real uphill battle that we're at. And I think one of our main things is we don't want to shame organizations. We don't want them to feel as though they can't reach out for support, because like that example you just gave, like you said, like there definitely should have been more support put in place for those guys. But equally, I sometimes do feel bad for the people that are in organizations. If they've not had mental health training, if they've never experienced it themselves, this thing then happens on site. They lose someone, everyone's grieving, and they don't know what to do themselves. And
yeah,
they
true.
think they're doing the right thing. They don't necessarily know. They can't do it with conviction because they're not sure. And they also have their own full-time job as well. And then this topic of mental health comes up, and I can see why kind of organizations do shy away from it, because it's a really important topic and they don't want to do it incorrectly, and because they know that that can also have ripple effects the wrong way. So I think it really is about going to organizations saying, it's okay to come to us and say, we need some support, we need some advice from you guys about how we do tackle this in a larger scale, because it is so important that they are doing more and they're putting the right things in place. We spend so much of our lives at work that it's a great place for, we always say, like, our mission is for work to not even just not negatively impact our mental health, but also positively impact it. Even if people are struggling with the mental health that's going on at home for them, we want to make it so it feels like a safe space for them to come into work and share what's going on for them and lighten the load and have that safe space to talk about it, even if it's not work related. And on the other hand, if it is work related, again, have that confidence to be able to go up to their manager and say, actually, my workloads, I'm at capacity, my workloads, as much as I can take right now, and I don't need any more jobs thrown my way. And for that to be accepted in a non-judgmental manner, and
Yeah.
for that just to be the company norm, I guess, and across sites, and people have that confidence. And I think until we can look at how it's tackled in the workplace, I think sometimes how it's tackled in the workplace is kind of igniting the stigma. So it's kind of going back to page one of almost looking at the very basics of, if someone comes to you and says, I'm struggling, how do you respond to that?
100%. That's the, you know what, and I think I'm going to correct myself on this. You're right. Corporations, especially, I think the smaller ones, like the SMEs, they haven't got the awareness. I think the bigger companies with thousands of employees and HR departments and all the rest of it, I think they're a bit more switched on to how to deal with it, because they've got, mental health first aiders, they go to seminars. But the smaller companies where, they're just kind of coming into the industries essentially with 20, 30 staff, I guess they're a huge gap where they actually need loads of support and loads of awareness and loads of positive association to mental health. But they're also the most difficult people to target. Like obviously I focus on mental health as well, but I'm not a charity, I'm more of a paid service. But it'll be interesting to hear how we can actually speak to the SMEs as well as the big companies, because I think there's two different messages that need to be put across. And what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's that thing of, Matesinmind will work with everyone and anyone, whether you are a massive, nationwide corporation, or whether you are, two men in a van, regardless, both people need support. Both people need the confidence to have that conversation, regardless of whether you're the CEO or whether you're boots on the ground. It's important that people are talking about mental health at each level. So I think it's about getting people involved, adapting the models. We have just launched actually this year our Support a Light program, which again is designed specifically for the man in a van, the lone workers, the people that are self-employed, because again, we know that those are probably some of the most vulnerable. They have to worry about where the next job's coming from, where the next paycheck's coming from, chasing those payments that aren't coming through. All of those things, they're sometimes spending days on end not speaking to anyone, and they might go for days without being offered even a drink at the workplace. If they're going between different sites and they don't have an office, they might actually have not spoken to anyone about their weekend yet. And it's things like that that really can get people down and really start to have a toll on people's mental health. So I think it's our Support a Light is creating resources specifically for them, but specifically aimed at the struggles and the stresses and the pressures that they're going through, and making it relatable. I think going back to your original point of the fact that we've got this demographic that are just by nature not able to open up, not be able to feel confident. And I think it's about creating tailor-made support for them so that they do see themselves in the posters, they do see themselves in the training and the awareness, and it's not just so generic that they think, oh, it doesn't apply to me. That's for the people that are that do believe in mental health, or that are in touch with their emotions. That's not me, so I'm not going to even touch it. Whereas if you can provide a service that is really specific to them, and they can really see themselves in the materials, they can hear things that they've been through being shared by others, I think that's where you'll get that connection and hopefully finally make that breakthrough.
That's so much information that you've just put out.
Sorry.
No, that's really good, because I can just feel your passion about this, and it's so nice and refreshing. With this new thing you've launched this year, sorry, what was it called again?
So it's Support a Light.
Is it possible you could send me a link to that and I can add it into the bio, and people can actually go and see that? And I think I just want to touch on that. What is it? Like, I know we said resources, but what type of resources are there so that people can kind of go there and sort of know what to expect, if that's okay?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, the way we're trying to do it is actually in we call it a champions model. So we're getting our larger organizations that have a supply chain, which includes a lot of the men in the van, that kind of thing. The guys that can't really probably afford or don't have the time to invest in mental health provisions. So we kind of do it in like a champions model, where those people that are right at the top of the chain, they sponsor the Support a Light program for their supply chain, and then it allows them to access resources that are specific for them. They get access to training things that they can sit in their van and listen to, rather than it being in our supporter program that we do it so we train someone up in the team to deliver a training course, whereas again, a team of 3 aren't going to do that. Whereas if we've broken it down into like a video recorded training session that they can listen to, I think that again, that's really important. We don't want those people to miss out on the same tools and resources that we provide. We actually want to change it so it's more accessible for them and more relevant. So it's practically everything that we still do in the supporter program, but it's just kind of put to the right scale for them so it's applicable. We also do a mental health assessment. That's a big part of what we do, is we go into organizations and we do almost a gap analysis assessment. So we really want to understand where they are right now, what they are doing, what they have got in place, what's working, what's not working. We then want to kind of create an action plan for them for the next year of, these are some things you can consider. Because again, we talk to organizations all the time that think that they've done it. They think they've, put the posters up, they think they've got the mental health first aiders, and what more can we do? And there's always more you can do. With mental health, there's not a finishing line. There's always probably something more you could be doing to support your employees. So we use that gap analysis and we try to do it with them every year as well, so they can track their progress and see how far they've come and see the impact that it's had as well. And again, we're trying to create a relevant assessment for the people that are not in the organisation size that would work for. We're trying to make it relevant to those smaller teams. So it's all those things that we're going to try and bite size for those people. And again, hopefully, like I said, we've only launched this year, but hopefully in the next few years, we'll really, really see the uptake in that and see the effectiveness of that resource.
Honestly, I'll be absolutely rooting for Mates in Mind for this, because I think that is such a good service, like, because I used to be that man in a van, I used to have my own little van and, subcontract work out. And so many things you've said have actually touched a nerve with me because,
Mhm.
nobody asked me how my weekend was. They didn't care. They
Mhm.
just wanted to get into the job, do it as like as hidden, if you like, as possible, because they don't want to see contractors in reception and things like that. And it's like, okay, I'll just crack on, I'll do my job, and then I go home. And I did live by myself for a long time as well. So okay, fine, I'll come down and, like you said, I'll writing out quotes or go out and do an emergency call out at 8 o'clock, come back for 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I have to ping out the invoice and then realize, oh, somebody hasn't paid me, let me go quickly chase that. And then all of a sudden
Mhm.
it's bedtime, and then you wake up in the morning, you do that again. And it's recently I've come out and said, there's 3 words and 9 letters people need to really start incorporating in their day, and that's how are you? Because I
Mhm.
don't think enough. And this isn't just construction related, by the way. I think this is just general
Absolutely.
humanity.
Yeah, definitely.
We need to take more care of each other, because I remember, I'll tell you a soppy story actually. I had a customer, right? And it was her husband, and her dog, and the dog is the cutest thing in the world, right? And I've done a few jobs for them. I've done a few jobs for them again. Carried on over the years, carried on working for them. And then one day, out of the blue, she messaged me saying, "Fish, haven't heard from you in a while. How are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, she wants me to do some work. Okay, yeah, I'm cool.
Mhm.
When do you want me to come?" But basically, it was just like, "When do you want me to come over and do whatever you need me to do?"
Mhm.
And she was like, "No, I don't really want you to do anything right now." And I was like, "I swear to you, I'm not exaggerating this." I froze. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to respond to this question. I don't actually know how to respond to it. And believe it or not, but that actually led into a friendship, and we're still friends. And I went to her
Mhm.
wedding, and now we go on double dates. And she's got a little boy now, and it's just like those simple things that humans can do can actually change someone's whole day, and it could really create a good relationship. Just taking the time out to
Absolutely.
listen and care. I don't know, that's just me sharing my little story
Yeah,
about
no, I
it.
absolutely agree. I'm the worst because I always say, like, whenever I see someone or someone comes into the room, I'm like, oh, you're right. And then every now and then someone will go, yeah, I'm okay. How are you? And like it always throws me off guard because I never expect it like to come back.
Yeah,
And I think it is that whole thing of if we can, and as well, I think sometimes as well, especially men and the industry we're talking about, it's that whole thing, isn't it, of how are you? Oh yeah, I'm fine. But how are you really? Or like
yeah.
that kind of thing, because people blow it off so easily or say like, oh no, I'm
It's,
fine, like I don't want to talk about it. But when you can really spot the signs in people that their behavior's changed, and they're acting out of character, they're doing a few things that they wouldn't normally do, really sitting down and, like you said, not doing it in a like small talk at the kettle, or asking because I actually need them to do something, so I'll ask it to be polite. It's that like actually taking time out of your day to go up to that person and really invest your time and energy into finding out how they are. Again, I think in the workplace some people have like a wrong idea that people are being nosy, they want to know what's going on so they can
of
judge you or spread
course.
it around the office. And again, it's just not true. People really do care. People want to know how you are, and if there is anything going on for you that they can help support with, even if it is just listening for half an
Yeah,
hour. That can go such a long way for people. And again, it's changing that idea about what people mean around how are you. Do they actually
yeah,
care, or are they saying it as a formality? And I think if we can switch the narrative on that, and really change the fact that when someone's asking, they generally want to know because they care, I think that would again have such a massive impact.
huge, huge impact. Because I think you're right in saying, I think there's always an intention behind how are you without it just
Hmm.
being the genuine how are you. Like, I don't know about you, right? But if I'm in London and or wherever, it doesn't matter if it's in London or
Hmm.
not, but I go into a Costa or whatever, and I'm like, the person behind the till is like, blah blah blah. This is how much you got to pay, whatever. And I'll just go, oh, yeah, how's your day going? I
Hmm.
find that they're so busy doing their own thing, and then all of a sudden they look up and go,
Yeah.
but yeah, and it's like, but we don't need to live in a society where that's the question, which is people are like frozen by. It should be
Yeah.
a question where
Hmm.
it's just like, how are you? It's you don't, I think it's a weird dynamic where we've somehow
Yeah.
managed to make that really good thing turn out to be, how are you? By the way, can you do this for me?
This
And
absolutely.
things should definitely change in that. But one of the things I'd love to talk to you about is, in the construction industry, what do you find are the common things that keep coming up for people, men and women, tradespeople, let's just say, that are consistently coming up, and the struggles they're facing?
Yeah. I think there's so many. I think it's such a really interesting industry. I only joined the charity this year, and previous to that I didn't really have much insight, and I think it's really easy for people on the outside of the industry to think like, what have they got to be stressed about? You know, they sit in the sun, they put bricks together. I think people imagine, when you think of a stressed employee, you think of that person in an office surrounded by paperwork, working late nights, exactly that image. Like, we can all picture it. I think that is kind of the face of a stressed employee. So then when you think about tradespeople or people in the industry, I think it's really misrepresented. And I think that's why their statistic is really shocking for some people to hear, because they're like, oh, that doesn't really match up to what I imagine their day-to-day life looks like. And I think from the conversations I've had since working for Mates in Mind, there are so many specific stresses and pressures that are specific to this industry, and that they don't get talked about enough. So things even like, working away from home, we take for granted. Well, I definitely do. Going home every evening to see my family and spending time doing what I want in my house, feeling comfortable. So many people are working away for weeks on end, having to go into a hotel room, not being able to see their friends and family for weeks on end sometimes. They don't have the comfort of a kitchen where they can cook at their home cooked meals. They're eating a lot of fast food. They're probably going to the pub more often because, what else is there to do? You're in an area you don't know. So then, things like you start drinking more, you're eating unhealthily, your general physical health starts to decline. You're working outside, you're working long hours, you're working to deadlines, all those things that are so specific to the industry. And I think when you really sit down and think about it, the statistic becomes less shocking over time, because you're almost like, no wonder more people aren't suffering, because it is a really, really hard industry to break into because of those things. And unfortunately, some of them can't be mitigated. You have to send people to work away from home. It's kind of the name of the game. So it's kind of, again, how can then organizations support those employees that are working away from home? How can they support those employees that are doing long shifts, doing the overtime shifts? At what point do they step in and ask the question, how are you coping with these shifts? Because unfortunately, you can't completely just erase the stressor, but there's obviously things you can do along the way to help support them with that stress.
God, you've touched on so many points there, and in my head I'm like, yep, I get that, yep, I get that, yep, I get that, yep, I get that, because I've walked in those shoes, if you like, for 14 years of my life. But you're so right in like saying, like, these conversations we're having right now are so important, because like our community understand this. They understand this because we're in it, we're learning about it. But other communities, we could say, I don't know, I'm not going to pinpoint any in particular. They don't have that education about what it is like in the construction industry. But these conversations, hopefully someone listens to it and it goes, oh my God, yeah, there is challenges here. And you're so right in painting that picture of, the typical, guy sitting in a van, windows down, blazing music, sun beaming down, eating a sandwich. That's the typical vision of a construction worker. But the truth is that's so inaccurate. It's unbelievable. There's been so many times where my boss would come over to me, Sarvish, do you mind just working this weekend? And even when you go back to him and say, mate, I've just worked the last 2 weekends. That means I've worked, 24, 21 days straight. And it's like, come on, mate, just one more weekend. And it's just like, it's like that indirect pressure you get from companies. But I also understand that company has to make a profit to keep us in work. So it's like a vicious cycle. You go round and round and round. But how can we break that cycle? Because ultimately, I think the profit margins in construction are quite low, especially for the SMEs. I can't talk about the big corporations.
Yeah.
But they're fighting against each other. So they have to keep their costs low. And that means the guys have to work harder. So it's like,
yeah.
how can we build awareness around that?
That's it. I think that's probably part of the issue, is that I think so many organisations kind of think, oh, my hands are tied. Like I'd have to have someone to work that weekend, for example. I can't, otherwise we're not going to meet our deadline, then we won't get paid. And,
Yeah,
that's a bigger problem. So they kind of think, oh, I can't help that, which is true. And, we completely empathise with that. Again, we don't want organisations to veer away from having these conversations,
yeah,
or
absolutely.
fear as though that it's a kind of worms to open because it's going to impact their ability to do their jobs. We want it to be a really open conversation about how can we get
Yeah,
to a point where we can meet in the middle, and it doesn't compromise your ability to meet your deadlines, it doesn't compromise to the standard of your work or anything like that, but we also provide that support to those people that need it the most. And I think it's around having that conversation of, okay, they're working that extra weekend, have you checked how that makes them feel? Have you checked about how they're feeling afterwards? Can you then look forward and look at the weekends you can give them off in the next few weeks, or days they could take off in the week to have that break? It's not necessarily taking, like I said, it's not taking away the stressor, but it's looking
yeah,
how you can support them with that stressor in mind. And again, it's going to be tailoring it to each employee as well. You might have one employee that is working weekends and they're not seeing their family, and that's a whole issue in itself. You have to look at
mm,
that person and what you can do for that person. But then you might have someone else who, instead of that, they've got a relative that's ill and they need to take afternoons off to
of
go and
course.
visit them. And again, you can take that mindset of, oh, well, they can do that in their evenings, they can do that in their spare times. If they can't get over to the hospital, for example, before visiting hours close, but by still finishing at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, can you take that time to allow them to leave early? Because the chances are, and we're massive on this, is the fact that if you really invest in your employees' mental health, 9 times out of 10, their like passion for the job and their enthusiasm will pay it back in return. If you
100%.
really look after your staff, and we're finding as well, that like young people, especially when they're looking for their next job role, they really prioritize how a company treats people with mental health and
Mm.
well-being when they're looking for their next opportunity. It's something they really value in a company, and I think that is largely because it's something that they want to enjoy their job, they want to feel looked after, and then in response they'll work probably 10 times harder. I've got to say, mates in mind really practice what they preach. They're great with us in terms of really supporting us to have that work-life balance, and they really take interest in who we are as people, what we do in our spare time, and then if there is
Yeah,
accommodations they can make to make our lives easier, they'll do it. And because of
I
that, I
love
love my
that.
job, and
Yeah,
I'll go, I'll work so much harder because I love the company I work for. I want them to do well, and I want to pay back, what they've done for me, even in the short time I've been there. So I think it's really about that culture you create.
culture is such an important factor that plays in part of the current day. I think back in the day, the culture was, give a good pension scheme or whatever. But
Hmm.
now we're kind of steering away from that. I think young people, especially, which are the future of the industry, of every industry,
Hmm.
they're really focusing on exactly what you said. Is what is this company going to do to support me on my journey, rather than just giving me, perks. It's the actual
Hmm.
care. It's the actual asking. How are you? It always goes back to that for some reason.
Yeah,
But
it does massively.
yeah, and it's just that having that passion and that care for that individual and treating them like a human, not just a number. And that's another thing I've really actually. Before I touch on anything else, I just want to quickly throw out there that this is not a dig at any corporation. I know
Hmm.
a lot of people may listen to this and go, "Oh my god, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that." This conversation isn't about that. It's about having these difficult conversations and building awareness around how we can all do better. As
Hmm.
Onward Shift, I want to do better. As Mates in Mind, you're consistently wanting to do better. And we're all on the same vision, we're all on the same page, and we all want to make the construction industry better. So if anyone's listening to this and thinking, oh my God, I'm not doing this, that's okay. You've just taken the first step to understanding how you can do that. And we're all in the same page. We're all on the same boat. We're all trying to do better. So I just want to really, really emphasize that this is not putting anyone down. This is actually hopefully lifting people up and building awareness
Hmm.
around it. I think just wanted to throw that out there before we talk about anything else. Last thing I want to do is put anyone down. That's not the point of this podcast at all. But as corporations, how can they, okay, let's say I'm going to try and give an example. Let's say we've got a corporation with 50 people, right? This is just an example. 50 people, they're really passionate about creating that culture, but their engineers, they're like, this change is weird. It's creating that conflict of, well, why do you want to know that? Like, am I getting sacked? Like, well, what's going on? Like, there's that. Corporations are trying their best again. Oh, we're really passionate about this. We want to change the culture. We want to do better. And then you've got the engineers and, kind of go, I'm not happy with this. How can we, that mates in mind is the middle person, but how can we create more middle people to bring them together and go, no, this is actually coming from a good place. Do you not, I don't know if I'm making sense there.
Definitely. Yeah, no, definitely. I think the first point I would make is real perseverance. I think it would be so easy for organisations to start something, kind of get their people on the ground going, oh, I don't like that. I don't like this. Like, oh, like, stop talking about mental health. Like, stop trying to ram it down our throats. Because I've heard that. I've heard the whole like, oh God, this is all part of that woke business. Like, I don't want to hear it. And I think the main thing an organisation can do is keep it up. Like, keep not pushing it down people's throats, that sounds really forceful, but like keep talking about it, keep opening up that conversation, keep putting the resources out there, even if people do complain or say like, I just put it straight in the bin, like I don't read the emails. Like, again, it's all stuff I've heard before, and I just think the more you can talk about it, again, you don't necessarily, I think with mental health, you don't necessarily have that immediate reward with it. You don't get something that you can track, but because you don't know, if you put a poster up on the back of a toilet door, for example, you don't know how many people are taking a photo of that and saving it in their phone, favoriting it and keeping it for a day that they need it, and they might go home and call that number, or in 6 months time they might look back for that photo and call that number. So organizations might not get that immediate gratification of knowing that it's made a difference, but I just think we know that there's an issue. We know that the industry is, really, really struggling, and putting these resources out there, you don't know who's benefiting from it. You don't know how many people are calling those numbers or anything like that. But if you can keep going, putting it out there, it really sets that message of, we're not just doing this as a tick box exercise. We're not just doing this because we feel we have to, or for an awareness day, or, to put something on our LinkedIn. We're doing it because we actually care, and we're not going to stop talking about it because it is important, and we're going to keep going until you take us seriously and realize that we're not going to shut up about this. We're going to keep holding that conversation, so it really gets through to them like, oh, okay, they genuinely care. They're not doing this because they have to or because it makes them look good. They're doing it because they generally want us to be okay and want us to have the support if we need it. So I think that's the first major part about it.
Sorry, can I touch on that quickly?
Of course you can.
I just want to use like one word with that, and that's powerful. And the reason I think it's powerful is because it takes a lot of courage for a company to go, okay, we don't know much about this, but we're going to educate ourselves. I think that needs to be applauded. That needs to go, well done. Like, doing an amazing thing here, amazing thing. That should be celebrated. And then on top of that, to have like the ability to be, consistent with it, right? You've touched on a really huge point there, and that is, it's going to be hard. Not everyone is going to agree with it. Not everyone's going to jump on board and go, yeah, this is really good, because there's lack of education there. But you're right, like putting it down people's throats is, maybe that's not the right saying, but I know exactly what you mean with that. It's consistently feeding people information about mental health, and that will then lead to that one person going, actually, I'm having a really rough week. I've just read this blog, or I've just seen this podcast, or I've just seen this support my company offer. Maybe I'll give it a go. And it's at that point the gratification will come, because you would have helped that first person. And that's
absolutely.
And all that hard work, all that consistency will hugely pay off. So I just think it's powerful to, take that first step and really, really, really just go for it. No matter how much negativity you get from it, you just keep going for it. Sorry, I just wanted to add that, because I just thought it was so
I think it's, absolutely. I know, I completely agree. And I think it is those people that sometimes we have it when organizations come to us and it is just one person that kind of says like, like, I'll have to go back and convince everyone else to get on board with this, but I'm really interested in it. I'm really enthusiastic. I really want to do something. And it's those people that are the massive change agents in all of this. They're the ones that create a shift. They're the ones that really persevere. And going back to your original question of kind of, how can, you get that workforce of 50, how do you get them engaged with it? How do you get them interested or having those conversations? And again, I think it's really turning it into like empowering them, I guess, in a way
Yeah.
to talk and to take charge of it. And we see organisations all the time, and we really work hard with them to pick out those individuals. It might be that first of all, it's those ones that might suggest that they get trained as mental health first aiders. You've then got
Okay.
people that are interested in mental health, they're interested in helping others, they're open to having those conversations. You can then use those people almost as a champion within your organisation. They can really champion for change, and they can
Yeah.
really be a force to be reckoned with within an organization, because you pick out those individuals that they might be that engineer, they might be surrounded by a group of 10 other engineers. If 9 out of 10 are laughing saying, oh, I don't want to get involved with this, it's not for me, but that one's going, no, come on guys, this happened to me before, I have struggled with my mental health.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
person could then, it's a domino effect, with one person starts to open up and feels confident to tell their story, then you might find other people then come forward as well. And I think it's all about facilitating that within your workplace. Again, giving people space to tell their stories. Every single person is unique. Every person's story matters, and everybody, what they've been through. It's not a case of being nosy or wanting people to know your business, but it's about, letting people know who you are, why you are the way you are, what you've been through in
Yeah.
life. Why should you keep that to yourself? It's something to be celebrated, who we are as people, and what goes on in our lives outside of it before we even came to this job, for instance. What is your journey in your career? All those
Yeah.
stories that people have to tell, they should be encouraged to be talked about, not the kind of, again, I've heard it on sites being, we don't have time to be talking about feelings, we've got deadlines, we need to crack on with it.
Of course.
And again, if you can get your managers, again, I think a massive part of what we do is that education of managers, office staff, supervisors, all those people, to again not be shutting down these conversations, but being
Yeah.
at their level, being able to facilitate it, again, is so important, because giving people the space and knowing it's okay, and they can do it on company time, if you will, or if if that's how they're measuring it, allowing that to take place, because again, giving them space to look after their mental well-being means when they go back to work, they feel good about themselves, they're feeling enthusiastic,
Yeah.
they're feeling positive, and they probably work 10 times harder again.
Absolutely. And I think there's just as you said that, my head's hurting from like nodding to everything you're saying. I'm like, oh my god, stop saying the right thing because my head is going mad. But you're absolutely spot on with so much of the information you're putting out there. So thank you for that. Like honestly, I'm hoping someone listens to this and goes, yeah, I can relate to that, I can relate to that, I can relate to that. But it's like, when you go to the gym, right? You might struggle going to the gym, but when you walk out of the gym, you feel good. And I think that's such a good analogy to use with mental health. Yes, it's hard to talk about your feelings initially. And yes, it's really, really uncomfortable and vulnerable. But if you continue to do it, these conversations won't be difficult. And like my last podcast with Stephen Kirby, I call him Steve Kirby, but with Steve, the first time he spoke about it, it was really uncomfortable. It was really difficult. But now he does, tours all over Europe, helping people understand that, it doesn't matter what you look like, or if you're, got tattoos all over you, or what. It doesn't matter who you are or what you look like. People can suffer. And just like with the domino effect you mentioned, if there's 10 guys in a room and one person's gone, actually, this has really affected me, I can almost guarantee he's not the only one feeling that way, but the other guys just feel ashamed of speaking up about it. So I think having that open communication around people, construction workers and stuff, and giving them that platform to kind of go, yes, I want to talk about this, it would be so game changing. It would be so game changing. Like it really would be. And I think you've touched on a really important topic there, and that's mental health first aiders. Now, I think that's a controversial topic, but I want to stay away from the controversial side of it because I don't think it's necessary. I think I want to focus on the positives of it. And it is, and you're right in saying the first step to a company culture changing may just be that one person going, I want to be a mental health first aider. I want to champion this and I want to support it. So I think the positive of a mental health first aider is that first step people take to build awareness around it, which will then share to others. So yeah, sorry, I keep interrupting your flow, but you've got so many amazing points I just want to, talk about.
Definitely. No, I think it is really bad. I think mental health first aiders are an amazing tool. I think it really gives people the opportunity as well to show that they want to create change. They want to be that voice. They want to be that listening ear as well. I think And going back to kind of your gym analogy, I think that's perfect as well. I think we've talked about how it's really important to make mental health a conversation that's understood by the demographic. And
Mm.
again, a lot of times when we look at mental health, it's often described as like a flower, you water yourself and then you grow. And again, men aren't going to relate to that. Whereas if you
No.
think it back and equate it to the gym process, the fact that when you lift that first weight, it's heavy, you don't want to do it, you want to leave, that uncomfortable feeling, that feeling of like progress seems so far away, like I don't know if I'm going to
Yeah.
get there. But yeah, it's the commitment, it's the willingness to turn up, it's the willingness to keep going. And then when you start to see progress, you start to see the muscles coming through, you start to see, you start to feel proud of yourself, you start
Yeah.
to really appreciate who you are as a person, and all that same development that happens in the gym. Not that I go to the gym, can't even relate to that side,
Yeah.
but I imagine that's how it feels. But it's the same journey that you go on like a mental health journey, in the sense that if you do go to counselling, or it doesn't even have to be counselling, if you have a peer support group, or you have a mental health first aid, or you have some outlet, and you do feel confident in talking about it, and then every now and then you kind of go back to it, you continue to do the work, you continue to share, you continue to talk about what's going on, and again you start to see the same progress. Your self-worth starts to grow, your ability to combat your mental health, whether it's anxiety, for example, you might find that you're finding it easy to manage because you're talking about it, you're getting
Yeah.
some ideas about how to cope, and you're putting those things in place, you're doing the work yourself in your own time, yet you're also using the time when you're around others to share, and you see the exact same progress in your mental health as you do in your physical health. It's all about investing in yourself, taking
Yeah.
time out of your day, your week, your year, to really put the time back into yourself. We spend so much of our time doing things for other people. Obviously at work, we're working for someone else, we're doing whatever our job is. In our home life, we might look after our children, we might look after our parents, we might have to go and do the grocery shopping for the family. All those things a lot of the time we're doing for other people. And it's when you invest some time into the week, whether it is going to the gym, going to therapy, whether it's going on a run, whether it's whatever works for you, whatever makes you feel good, whatever makes you feel better about yourself, and makes you feel like you can then attack your week ahead, do it. That's my biggest advice when it comes to mental health, is find what works for you, because it's different for everyone, and then do it. Keep doing it until you really start to notice the difference.
There's something I want to touch on that, and that's it doesn't matter what your hobby is. I know in construction it's like, lads going and playing football, whatever. But all my life I've worked in construction. There's one thing that I've always wanted to do, right? I don't really share this ever, but that's to learn to play the saxophone. Like, honestly, I actually wanted to do it so much that I don't know if you can see it, but I've got it tattooed to my arm.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
just
that.
yeah. And it's like, it's really interesting that as a guy who works in construction, I was always a bit scared to go, really want to. But it's only where I've come out and I speak more about mental health and I'm kind of more like open about it. I'm like, I actually want to play the sax. I would love, I watch videos and I'm like, that sounds so amazing. I wish I could do that. And it's like, even having this conversation now, it's ignited that thing back in me going, I should really actually focus on this hobby because I feel it'll make me feel really good inside. Even though I'll, again, start off probably being really, really bad. Maybe in three years' time, I might be okay. It's always taking
Absolutely,
that first
yeah.
step. But
Then I think sorry. I was just going
please,
to say, I
after you.
think it's also really important, that whole thing about choosing what we do with our time, doing what suits you. I was saying to my colleague the other day, actually, that a lot of the time what I choose to do on my breaks are so different. Like sometimes I'll go outside and get some fresh air. Sometimes I'll literally lie in bed and look up at the ceiling. Sometimes I'll,
Yep.
reach out to a friend, or I'll use it to do errands, and I'll doctors, or, take something to the post office. And I said, it's really interesting because whatever I do on my break normally depends on what type of day I've had, and kind of what I need in that moment, whether I need to get out in the fresh air, whether I'm feeling really energetic and I have that time and space to be able to go and do those things that I need to tick off my list, whether I do just need to stare at a blank wall for 20 minutes and just have the time to decompress. And again, I think when it comes back to organizational support and how they can change the culture, again, is allowing their employees to do what they want to do, in order, when they need a break, if they want to talk to someone, create that space for them. If they want to go and take 20 minutes around the block, allowing them to do that. I think I've seen workplaces as well where they really can kind of choose or dictate what people do in that time, or there's that pressure, again, coming back to that word pressure of, it's not not necessary, but it's heavily implied. So you feel that
Yeah.
pressure of, everyone spends their breaks in the lunchroom together, eating together. And that's not what some people want to do. Some people want that time away. Some people want to go eat in their car. Some people want to have that space. And again, when it comes to organizational culture about mental health, it's allowing people to do what they need to do in that moment and giving them that autonomy to do that.
Can I touch on something here? And sadly, this is a bit more of a negative than a positive. But I'm hoping from the negative we can create a positive, and that is salaries. So I've worked for, I can't even number the amount of companies I've worked for now. And one of the things I consistently hear in an interview is the salary's really low, but you can work. There's endless overtime. You can work every weekend if you want to. Now, I've always, as a younger person, like when I was, early 20s, mid 20s, I was like, yeah, I want to work all the hours I can get. I'd work Monday to Sunday, Monday to Sunday, Monday to Sunday, work evenings, work earlys, whatever, work. I'm 30 now, and I do not have the same energy as I did when I was in my early 20s. I'd much rather have, again, the world, obviously, but I'd much rather have a good salary and not have to work the weekends rather than a really bad salary and then have to work loads of additional hours to compensate a good salary. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that in the construction industry. They just go, that contractor's earning 60 grand. So, he's only pulling cables. He's also working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
He hasn't got time to focus on his hobbies or his passions, or forget his hobbies and passions, his family, or some contractors don't even have the time to have a proper shower. And I think this is something that, again, this is my opinion, and I want to emphasize it's just an opinion, but I do feel companies do need to compensate their staff with better packages to understand that they shouldn't have to work overtime to make a good living. But I don't know.
Definitely.
I don't want it to be controversial.
No, financial pressures are a massive kind of point of discussion, especially with the cost of living, with, interest rates going up, and all that kind of thing is really, really important. Again, that organizations feel confident in having that discussion with their workforce. You want to be able to have that discussion of, if you are struggling financially, what support can we put in place? There's organizations that have that scheme in place where you can access your salary early if needed to pay a particular bill, or at least having managers that are confident in signposting to support agents for financial difficulties specifically. There are charities out there that can help support those people that are in debt or need help with putting in a mortgage freeze, for example. All those things that would be really, really helpful for someone and could potentially move someone from being in a point of crisis where they're really, really struggling and can't see a way forward to being able to breathe a bit more and having that space to feel like they're okay again and can think more logically about things to then put more permanent steps in place. And again, if we can educate, I think, employees and employers about kind of how they can talk about that in the workplace, because you are so right, organizations do need to be really upfront about salaries, working expectations, and I think it's also important to really communicate boundaries and make sure that all your employees are putting their boundaries in place. So when it comes to, you said before about, getting asked to work that weekend and being like, I've already worked the last 3, like I was really looking forward to this weekend, or I've got plans, it's my dad's birthday, like, I really wanted this weekend, feeling free to say no and having that workplace culture that saying no is okay. You want your employees to put their boundaries in place. You want them to be able to draw that line to protect their own mental health, because I feel like it's very common these days to be a people pleaser and have that fear of management, that fear of, I don't want to let them down. I don't want to, I myself have always bent over backwards for employers, because I've always been the the little nerd almost from school that's like followed me into the workplace, where I've wanted to be like the teacher's pet, or I've wanted to please, I've wanted to look good, I've wanted to, and especially with the cost of living and things like that, people want the promotions, they want the pay rises, they need them in any case, and they're really reliant on them. So again, they're not going to there's a pressure of, I don't want to let my manager know that I can't cope with my workload because they might not give me that promotion. So I'm actually going to work harder, even though my mental health is suffering, because I want to prove a point that I'm doing well, and I can meet those deadlines, and I can work all the hours under the sun to please them, so that they then give me that financial return. And again, I think that's a really toxic culture that you can create in the workplace, sometimes without knowing it as well, because if you've got all these eager people, like you said, especially young people, if you've got them saying like, yeah, I'll do the hours, yeah, I'll do the overtime, like, you're thinking, great, like, absolutely, like, my workforce are running smoothly, everything's perfect, we're meeting our deadlines. But then it's when you look at then the mental health statistics that you're like, oh, okay, so that's where I'm losing out, because I'm gaining the here, but that's where we're actually taking the hit, is that my employees are working themselves into the ground and they're all suffering from burnout. So I think
Absolutely.
it's important making sure you create a culture where boundaries are so important, and people are really drawing that line in the sand of, I'll work 3 weekends and then I need 2 weekends off. I need to go home. I need to spend time with my family. I need to be able to have that downtime so that I can then come back to work with 100% energy levels again.
Yeah. And I think something that we should touch on is companies. Again, I've heard this, and I've in all honesty, I've also said it, and that is something on the lines of like, oh, the company's made X amount in profits this year, yet we're not getting a pay rise. And I think as a young person who's never run a business before, that would make me angry. But that's because I didn't have the education of that profit also isn't necessarily an actual money in the bank profit. There's overheads involved, there's offices, there's staff, there's vehicles, there's insurances, and the list goes on for companies. And I feel as if I don't know how to tackle this other than saying financial education. But I do think companies need to, rather than kind of going to employees going, oh, we've made 100 million in profits this year, they need to go, we've done exceptionally well, but these have been our costs to the year. And that's why you're not receiving, a 5% pay rise. It's a 1% pay rise. Because as an employee, I'm like, well, why can't I get a pay rise? You've made it. You're speaking so highly about the money the profits you're making, but then as the company, like the CFOs and all of them, they're kind of going, oh, actually, we have to say to other people we've made this money, but to our employees, we need to kind of be open and honest. I think education is so important around the finances.
Absolutely. I think it's really about providing that education to people about what the organization does on like a mass scale. I think that's really
Yeah,
important, even just for our well-being, is to really understand where our work and our effort goes. It's really nice, especially in the construction industry, when you're building something and that you actually create a product that's in front of you, or you contribute to, a building in London. Like, that's such an amazing success and an amazing thing to be proud of. But again, if your organization then don't provide you with the breakdown of where that's gone, or where those funds have gone, or any of that kind of thing, I think you can really feel, again, like that whole thing of being a number, not a person. Even if
yeah,
you're, the lowest level in your organization, you should still know what the CEO does on a day-to-day. You're having that transparency throughout your whole organization of what's really going on, where do funds go, how does the organization work, why do different departments exist, what does all this do. Again, I think that clarity makes you really have that feeling of being part of something bigger. You're part of the team. You
yeah.
really understand your
Absolutely.
industry, you understand how it works. And I think that's really, really important as well. It's easy to say, oh, we won't bother them with that information, it can be too overwhelming, you don't need to know about that until a higher level. But it's not true. Like, there's so
That's
much
true.
benefit from including them in from the day they join. You want them to feel part of something, you want them to feel as though they're contributing to the bigger picture. And I think that transparency, as well as what you're saying, is that, like, provides them the clarity in terms of where they are financially, but it also makes them feel as though they have control as well. Because I think as well, there's that thing of expectation of years over, when it comes to pay rises, almost like I should just get a pay rise because I've been here longer, which, I mean, I'm not completely against. I'm not trying to argue either side of that.
No.
More just a case of, it's well making sure employees feel empowered to go for promotions, to go
Yeah.
on those courses, to better improve their skills, and to qualify in extra roles that would allow them more flexibility with where they move in the company. And again, so then that financial comfort or that financial security of, they're investing in me as a person so that I can then build on my career, and I'm going to stay where I am and just hope the pay rises come in every year and I'm going to rely on that for my progression. It's actually
Of
like, no,
course.
how can we invest in you as a person, so that you can do those jumps yourself? You can move from, department to department or role to role, and you can climb that ladder with the tools that we give you to do that.
And that's so inspirational. Like, there's been so many times where I've seen a manager and I'm like, "Oh," like, they're just incredible people. And when I see them go level up, essentially, I'm like, maybe I've got an opportunity to level up here. So when companies do have that positive culture of people are going for those promotions, people are like chasing the next position in the company, or even creating a whole new division. I know some managers have created. I know one guy who fought and fought and fought and fought, and this company ended up creating a whole energy saving division, and that's doing huge successes. But it's because the company believed in him, and they empowered him, and they gave him the opportunity, and he worked so hard for it. I'm still inspired by him. It can happen. It does work, and there is so many good systems that can be put in place. But again, it's having open conversations, not debatable ones, but just open conversations, kind of going, there's positives, there's negatives, but at the end of the day, we're all here for the same reason and we're all fighting the same cause. Lindsay, I know we're coming up to the hour and I'm absolutely gutted because there's so much more I want to talk about, but I also am notoriously bad going over on all my podcasts. So before I go any further, I'd love to say if there's a part two available with you in the future, I'd love that. But I also want to say I'm not sure how many things we've touched on this podcast, because there's been so much invaluable information, and this has been such a good conversation. I really hope people listen to it and go, I can relate to this, and I really hope they use the link you provide to the new. Sorry, can you just name it one more time for me, please?
Yeah, so it's our champions model that then sponsors the Supporter Light version of our program through their supply chains.
Please send me a link to that, because I'll definitely want to put it in the bio so people can click it and use your resources. And yeah, I just want to say thank you, because I know we're tight for time today, but I'd love to do this again with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for obviously inviting us on, giving us the chance to talk about what the work that we do. And yeah, if anyone is interested or does want to speak to us, just reach out at any point, email us, call us, whatever you need. We're always here to give advice. So yeah, thank you for giving us this platform. And yeah, I would definitely be down for a part two. Cool.